Hey, supply chainers, wherever you are in the world, this is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. Happy Tuesday. Happy Valentine's Day. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I am the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge as well. And of course, we wouldn't be able to have Thoughts and Coffee without our sponsors. What are your business supply chain challenges? Too much inventory on hand? Too many disruptions and stockouts? Are there too many steps and touches involved? If you have a vision for improvement, Fastenal can tailor a solution to help you get there. From automated bins that monitor your inventory 24/7 to vending devices that let you control and track the products that keep your business running. Go to fastenal.com/LTSC to see how Fastenal can help you innovate in your supply chain. Well, welcome. This is going to be an amazing show today. We've got Will Urban from Flexport here with me today to talk about all the hot topics. He's going to be giving us a market update. But before we do that, let's talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we have a brand new episode. Now, I did this episode in person at Manifest with Shannon Hamilton of BlackBerry Radar, and we had a great time talking about asset management. Now, if you want to find out a little bit more about the BlackBerry brand and how they've innovated and gotten into the asset management space, definitely go and check out this episode. It's episode 322, wherever you listen to Let's Talk Supply Chain. It's also over on our YouTube channel. And we have a great time talking about how it's going to help you in your supply chains. What else is happening? So yesterday, I actually released my LinkedIn newsletter called The Monthly Hustle. And it's a journey of hope and healing living with lipedema. So not many of you know this, but you may have heard me say that I had surgery a couple of times last year. I wasn't ready to talk about my journey, but yesterday I decided to share the story with the world about what I had been going through over the last 12 months. And so we've been getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of great support. And so if you want to go and check that out, subscribe to the Monthly Hustle, which is my LinkedIn newsletter, and go and check out that story. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about really quickly is this on Instagram. So Justina Miles became the first deaf person to perform during the Super Bowl's halftime show. Now, I always talk about diversity and inclusion, and this is inclusion at its finest. This has never happened before, and so I wanted to bring it to your attention because inclusion is so important in how we make an impact in everybody's lives. And you can see here what a difference it can make for those who are watching the show and also being able to participate. And she really got into Rihanna's performance, which I thought was amazing, and just wanted to share that with you because this is what inclusion looks like. The other thing I wanted to share with you is the logistics of the private jets for the Super Bowl. We actually had a reply to this story on our Instagram this morning from somebody in security that had to help bring all of those people through security from their private jets. But 1,000+ private jets land in Phoenix for the Super Bowl. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So I wanted to share that with you. And last but not least, before we bring Will up, we've got a couple brand new live shows for you. One is happening today with Danny from Overhaul. It's called Red Flags at Pickup. And then on Friday, Eric Johnson is going to be back with us for the Startup Scene European edition, and that's 10 a.m. Eastern on Friday. Now, remember, definitely head over to those links and click the attend button. Because even if you can't attend live, I will be sending you the recording afterwards as long as you hit that attend button. So definitely go and do that. All right, now it's time to bring up Will. Will, hello, how are you?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Good. It's so great to see you. I feel like it's been forever. It was definitely
I
before the
know.
pandemic.
It was definitely before the pandemic that I think we've spoken live. So yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute. How have you
Yeah.
been?
Yeah. And since then, you've joined the Flexport team. So why don't you introduce
Right.
yourself and let everybody know who you are and
Sure.
what you do?
Well, I'm Will Urban. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Flexport. So I'm responsible for all our go-to-market motions. So sales, account management, any of our interactions with our clients, marketing, communications, uh, our global offices around the world that service our customers. So that's my role at Flexport.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm really excited for you to be here because we're going to be talking about all sorts of things. Flexport, we're going to be talking about ocean shipping. We're going to be talking about sustainability and how you guys are thinking about sustainability, which is a huge topic for everybody right now. But before we do that, let's go into our poll of the week. Now, you already saw this because you
Yep.
did make a comment on it. And so we asked everybody, how are those resolutions coming? Smashing them, working on them, maybe in 2024. So for me, resolutions and something that I've been talking about for the last couple of years is to pick a sustainability goal instead of maybe like a resolution of, working out more or eating better or something like that. So that because I feel like we can each in our own part make an impact on the environment if we just pick a small thing or one thing to do a small thing every single day. And so that's what I've been encouraging everybody to do. And for me, I didn't really pick too many resolutions for this year. So, I mean, I would say that I'm smashing them because I didn't really pick very many. Will, what do you think about this?
No, I think that's great. One of mine is just, I know there's nothing too dramatic here, but get more sleep, be a little more mindful of how I use my time. Um, not get pulled down any rabbit holes, that sort of thing. Um, I had to go. My parents are getting much older and spending a little more time with them. That's why
Mhm.
I lived in the Bay Area for a long time. We moved back to Seattle during the pandemic. So yeah, that's top of mind for me. I like your third point that you get to wiggle out of it a little bit. You can put a maybe in there, so you can adjust as you go through your year. Yeah,
Well, so I'm always about progress over perfection. I actually have a
yeah,
t-shirt in our shop on
uh,
letstalksupplychain.com because I think it's really important. I do it with my to-do list as well. I don't get caught up in, oh my goodness, I failed because I didn't get everything done today. I will
yeah.
shift things over. So I'll prioritize and shift things over to where I give myself a little bit more breathing room. And I think it's the same thing with resolutions. I think it's important that yes, remember that we have really good intentions, but life happens. And if we have to readjust and do something a little bit different, we can.
Right. And do you really believe anybody that says they knocked out every one of their New Year's resolutions 100%? I'm always skeptical. So
You're the skeptic in the room.
I'm a skeptic on that one. Yeah, just yeah.
I love
So
that. I want to say hi to Mohammed over on my personal LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us. And we just got Christina. Good morning. It's been a while. So glad to see you. All right, Will, why don't you give us a bit of a market update? We always do this with our guests on Thoughts and
mhm.
Coffee, just to talk about sort of what's happening in your world of supply chain. What are you hearing from customers? What are some of the things that you're concentrating on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest theme, which I'm sure everyone listening to this, if they're dealing, especially in international supply chain, is the falling market with pricing,
Mhm.
and where we went from just a very short period of time, the most constrained market that I've ever seen or been part of, and I've been doing this for date myself, but a long time, right? So
Don't say how long.
don't say how long, um, but now I think it's all a question of, am I paying the right rate? Is it market competitive in the marketplace? And it's really tough for both shippers and forwarders or shipping providers
Yep.
to keep up with that, right? Because it's a never ending, um, as the market drops a little bit, we as Flexport want to be market competitive, and we know we need to be market competitive. Just keeping up with the sheer volume of changing rates all the time is really daunting sometimes. And so we do that through a lot of automation and that kind of thing. But it's overall, that's what I'm hearing. Customers really want to know, are they paying a market rate? And
Yeah.
then I think the second thing is the capacity is so wide open, that everyone's sort of thinking, well, I mean, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but they're thinking, well, all these plans I had to revamp my supply chain. Do I really need to do that? Because now everything's open back up. And
Mhm.
so that's a very interesting question because everybody from the CEO down was getting pushed by their boards and shareholders and customers to come up with alternative sourcing, methods, different shipping lanes, different ports of entry, anything they could do to get around all the congestion that was going on in the last couple of years. And now it's wide open, and everybody's saying, "Well, do I really need to do that now?" And so we have a lot of those conversations with clients. I mean, that's where I
Mm,
spend a lot of time right now. So that's what I'm really seeing with the market. What I hope doesn't happen with the market is a race to the bottom where all of a sudden carriers, whether it be air or ocean, are not making any money anymore. There has
yeah.
to be this happy medium between a fair market price that keeps ocean liners and steamship lines profitable.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much margin as there's been in the last 2 years for sure,
Right.
but that crazy up and down with
Mhm.
pricing is just impactful to everybody. It's a really tough thing to manage.
Well, especially with all the investment in new ships, which we've been talking about, we are going to talk
Hmm.
about a little bit later, plus all the sustainability initiatives, the rules and regulations that
Right.
everybody needs to adhere to, which are coming down the pipe.
Hmm.
And, there has to be room for that as well. And like you said, not the numbers that we were seeing over the last couple of years, but also not the numbers that we were seeing pre pandemic, because that doesn't benefit anybody. And then we
Hmm.
really do have to talk about redesigning your supply chain. So let's talk about that, because that's actually our first article of today. Now, Flexport back in November put out the 2023 Supply Chain Planning Playbook, predictions and advice from global logistics experts. Now, I love this because what it did was it really brought together some of the conversations that we're having in the industry right now, and then put it against some of the things that the experts are seeing, feeling, hearing, and how they would actually give advice to some of those supply chain professionals on how to think about 2023.
Hmm.
Now, why is rethinking supply chain strategy so important? You've said that people are starting to talk about whether they need to redesign their supply chain or not. I have some thoughts on this, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I think it's important for a number of reasons, right? So you have regulatory issues that change sort of a company's ability on where they source and ship to, right? And when I say it changes it, it could be price, it could be duty and costs like that. It could be just based on whatever country's regulatory requirements are, whether it be around environmental things or trade law, whatever. Those are always constantly changing. And I
Mhm.
think there's this idea that, and especially in the U.S., I think we think of ourselves, we think everything's the same way in the U.S. around the world, and that's not. Every country's different. Every government is different how they look at these things. So customers are constantly reevaluating it. And there's never been more, it seems like, more regulatory change or churn in the marketplace than there
Mhm.
is right now, whether it is sustainability or other things. The second part is what I mentioned earlier. Uh, so many supply chains, especially for like the mid-sized shipper down, Sarah, not maybe the Kohl's or the Home Depots of the world. They're almost sole sourcing for one or two factories in China, right?
Yeah.
And so when that got turned off, if you go way back to the beginning of the pandemic, you remember when they shut down everything when the first breakout happened in Wuhan, uh, a lot of companies didn't make it, right? It just shut off their only supply. And
Mhm.
so people are starting to think like, hey, that's a very dangerous thing to sole source from one place. Now, having said that, unwinding manufacturing is not that easy,
Mm-mm.
especially if you're in a technical manufacturing environment. So, for instance, it might be easier to resource textiles around the world, like t-shirt manufacturing or something like that. But if you're a semicon company where there's fabs with machinery, it's not like you're going to move from China to Vietnam overnight, right?
Mhm.
That just doesn't happen. There's a million things that go into that, and all kinds of considerations, not just the cost, but intellectual property protection, the cost of that machinery in those countries to
Yeah.
operate. Can I get technical expertise of people?
Mhm.
Can I get expats to move there? Just it's amazing when we talk to clients how many things that they have to consider with that. And so
Yeah.
I think from small shipper all the way up to the very largest companies, there's war rooms going on everywhere where they're rethinking all this.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the big picture things we're seeing is um, more manufacturing shifting to Mexico and Southeast Asia from China,
Mm-hmm.
and just in general, um, or or a plan or a strategy where they're going to move from 80% China to 60% China and move that other 20% around the world. Um, all different modes and thoughts about inventory management. Do I go to more of a Kanban system? A lot of companies got stuck with all this inventory on hand.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest stories right now is Bed Bath and Beyond, right?
Yeah.
They bought all this inventory a couple of years ago. It finally all came in. Now they can't sell it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not a unique. They might be an extreme example, but they're not a unique example.
Right.
And so those are all the things with the kind of the redesign of the supply chain that people are looking at, and we're just trying to help our customers navigate through it, give them the options, making sure they
Yeah.
understand if they source from this place versus the other one, what that means to them.
Yeah. Well, and where are they going to spend their risk dollars? I mean, I think the
Mhm.
pandemic really showed a lot of organizations how unique their supply chain really is
Right.
and how much more emphasis they need to put on that, because at the end of the day, it's the thing that really affects the bottom line.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so now we're seeing more people or more supply chain professionals at the boardroom level talking about how unique their supply chain is and where do they want to spend their risk dollars. What does that look like? I mean, China has still been having some shutdowns, right?
Hmm.
That hasn't necessarily gone away, and that makes a lot of people nervous. Or what markets can we go into to manufacture, and maybe it turns into a new customer region for us, a new revenue stream. So there's a
Right.
lot of different things to think about. There's free trade agreements with duties and taxes that come into play when you're looking at going to a new market. I wanted to ask you what your favorite quote was. Mine is up on the screen right now by Mr. Supply Chain Daniel Stanton. Everyone is struggling with uncertainty and trying to find a crystal ball. Isn't that the truth? Companies that are properly positioned can benefit from unpredictable events, even while their competitors are being disrupted. Now, that's a really interesting take on this, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you can navigate the unpredictable events and you know where you want to spend your risk dollars, that's going to give you the competitive advantage, and that's what everybody's looking for.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. I think that's exactly it. I mean, I my favorite one, and what I see a lot too, is Neil. He's our face to all our airline partners, right? He's the guy that's out negotiating with our airlines. You know, what we've encountered is customers are making up for budget shortfalls from last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to make them up on the pricing this year. And so working the spot market, really being nimble with your pricing. Um, Most of our larger ones, sign longer term rate agreements with us, and or they sign, if it's ocean freight, direct BCO contracts. All of that's getting questioned right now, and you really need to be not on the spot market, be mindful of the spot market, like
Mm-hmm.
taking quotes from the spot market to make sure that you're in market with pricing. That was my
Yeah.
favorite quote, because I think actually it's just such a germane thing right now, and I mean, literally 1 out of every 2 customers we're talking about this, and they're not necessarily beating us up on price. They know we need to make money. They just need to say, hey, last year we got creamed, right? We paid
Yeah.
way more than we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And it really depends on your commodity. If you've got a commodity like tomatoes or some kind of agricultural product, and you had to pay $25,000 per container, you probably lost $10,000 on a container because
Right.
it wasn't worth $25,000.
Yeah.
If you were somebody moving high-end electronics, it just cut into your margin, but it didn't crush you, right?
Right.
So it's a really interesting dynamic. Uh, we've messed around with all kinds of pricing models to try to make it more transparent to our clients,
Mm-hmm.
because we're just trying to, and I think most forwarders are, not just us, but we're just trying to keep the same margin or rough margin on top of that cost as it's going up and down in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the budget shortfall is huge, and then of course visibility costs, right? So
Yeah, it's
Everybody
mentioned
talks about visibility
I know, and
constantly.
it's mentioned a few times in this
Yes.
article, one at the SKU level and then one,
No.
when we're talking about risks. So really quickly before we go on to the next one, and actually I have a question from a fellow Flexporter that I wanna ask you as
Okay.
well. But visibility really quickly, I mean, how are you guys thinking about that? Because you've mentioned it a couple ways in your article.
Yeah, well, I mean, our platform and the technology that we're building um, is sole purpose is to give end-to-end true visibility from PO inception to final mile delivery and
Mhm.
everything in between. There's a lot of companies out there that are focused on a siloed piece of that, like the destination piece or whatever. But we're really focused on the whole thing, and we were before the pandemic, and we continue to be. Always the information, the biggest struggle is getting the information, getting your hands on all of it. So uh, it really comes down to how all your partners' data is and how you
Yeah.
can grab that data and make it visible to everyone else.
Mhm.
I think the biggest frustration with the visibility, especially to most importers in the U.S., Canada, Europe, over the last 2 years, the boat, while it was moving kind of slow, is pretty predictable, right?
Mhm.
It leaves port at this time, it arrives so many days later. But what happened was it was sitting offshore, and then when it got unfloated, it was a black hole of
Right.
where's my container in the stack? Where's it at?
Mhm.
How do I peel it out of the pile?
Mhm.
Uh, that was just a black hole, and so we are hyper focused on that portion of visibility from the time the container leaves the vessel at destination
Mhm.
until it's finally delivered to where it needs to go.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think anyone's nailed it yet because we're all working with disparate forms of information.
Yeah.
And that's really the struggle. It's people, they don't trust it, so
Mhm.
what they end up doing is they call you, or they spend 10 more times of their effort and time looking for or calling on it every day,
Mhm.
and that whole juggernaut drives cost and actually unreliable data through the network versus just trusting what's on your screen that came through you.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
the whole thing is just it's never been more amplified than it was, say, in the last like 8 or 9 months ago. It was just crazy.
Well, and everybody's using the word. I think it's a buzzword. I
Yeah,
wanna say hi to
yeah.
Fatima and Sam and Omkar over on my personal LinkedIn. Now, really
Okay.
quickly, we've got this question, are we starting to see the emergence of protectionist headwinds in global trade? And if we are, should we see it as a brief phase or paradigm shift?
It's a great question. There's definitely protectionist governments that have been around for a while that have impacted trade. Like the one I think of is Brazil, right? Brazil is a very tough country to import into. Like, for instance, you can't move, it's really hard to move secondhand goods like a used server or something like that into
Mhm,
Brazil versus a new one. Um, I think it started with during the Trump administration with the steel tariffs, and now you're seeing it as almost we're wondering with there's a lot of friction between the U.S. and China right now, especially with the balloons all over the place of UFOs. I mean, who knows
mhm.
if they're UFOs there or if they're Chinese military balloons? My son thinks they're UFOs. He gave me his theory last night. Uh, but it's definitely driving, the political agendas are definitely impacting trade and will continue to impact trade.
Mhm,
I don't think anyone's gone, other than a few countries, gone to a complete protectionist type of environment. But we sort of, the U.S. kind of started that with the tariffs, and then of course the rationale behind that is, hey, it's to counteract dumping that's going on with cheaper, materials like steel going into the U.S. or other countries.
mhm,
Um, we watch it very closely and report on it. It honestly hasn't changed. There hasn't been any huge issues other than the 301 tariffs in the U.S. that we've seen impact anything yet. But there's a lot of proposed stuff. Um, and what's also interesting too is we've had a change in the House in the U.S. and we anticipate some more trade legislation to come up that might be a little bit more on the protectionist side, or just essentially, raising a lot of duty rates. And the idea is that they're going to push manufacturing to the U.S. or Europe, but there's so much manufacturing going on outside those countries that maybe a couple percentage points can move,
mhm,
realistically over a short
mhm.
period of time for all the reasons we mentioned earlier for why changing sourcing is so tough. So it's a
Yeah.
great question. I I think we'll all have to just wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really depends on the political bent of that country.
So I think this is the first time on Thoughts and Coffee that we're not going to get to all the articles. So we are going to put the links in the comments for the other 2 articles, but we have a lot of questions coming in and I want to
Okay.
make sure that we answer I want to
Oh
make
wow,
sure that
yeah.
we answer the questions that are coming in from the audience as well. Omkar says, could you ask how will or at all if AI is helping supply chain in the sustainability, specifically when it comes to ocean shipping? Do you see AI supporting that at all? And are you guys looking at AI?
Supporting, well, one, we are looking at supporting, and we use AI through in our platform, right? So the whole idea with that is we can drive down our costs by streamlining a lot of things through AI, just normal shipment processing. The second thing is with that and that data you create models, and our vision is our customers will be able to go on our platform and say, hey, there's 3 different routings for this cargo. This one is the fastest, but it's the less sustainable.
Okay.
Right? Because it might take more time. I'm sorry, it might take less time, but more fuel.
Yeah.
It's sourcing from a place that's not as, using the sustainable practices as this other place, et cetera. And our customers are really, really interested in that. And we have the really core customers that really, it's part of their ethos, like a Patagonia, to companies that are realizing that it's very important to their customers that they think and source that way. And a lot of people in younger generations they'll wait a little longer if they know that it's, or pay a
Yeah.
little more if it was sourced sustainably.
And you're helping them to really get to their ESG goals, right? And
Right.
so when we talk
Exactly.
about sustainability goals and we talk about sustainability, it's
Mhm.
all about who you partner with and how they're actually helping you with those ESG goals. And I'm pretty sure when you sit down with a potential customer, they're asking you those questions of how are you going to help me with that?
Right.
Now,
Right.
I have one more question because we only have about 3 minutes left because I do have to end with some upcoming events. But Amy Robinson is asking about the disruption and going back to what we were talking about, visibility from the port. What improvements have transpired within Flexport on container arrival, import to pickup, and out for delivery? Do you have an app for that?
Do we have an app for that? Well, I know Amy very well, so thanks, Amy, for the question. Um, we have a couple apps for that actually. We have what we call Transmission, which is our automated app in which we talk to all our truckers so they can give us real-time visibility where the container's at. It's an app on their phone that they update. We dispatch to and they update constantly. And then we have a warehouse app that allows the inbound receiving folks at warehouses to have real predictability of what's coming at them and actually tell us, plan those loads or push loads off, based on timing and things like that. So we're hyper focused on that as well. But it also comes down to really great partners that communicate well when, no matter how good your tech is, when things go sideways, and they're communicating with us and our clients to make sure that everyone understands there's a delay. And not only there's a delay, but here's what we're doing about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have I have one question before you go on. Cybersecurity has been actually mentioned as one of the biggest risks for supply chains in 2023. What are you doing as Flexport from that standpoint and partnering with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we're it's always a conversation, especially with some of the issues that's happened in the industry. No one's immune from it. It can happen to any company, whether it be us or one of our clients. It's constant reinforcement with our employees about how to manage data, whether it be social engineering where someone's calling you and asking you phishing questions, to clicking on the wrong link in a document or an email, etc. We're also 100% cloud based, so we don't have server farms everywhere that we're trying to maintain ourselves, and we're working with partners that take the security piece to a really to the highest level they possibly can. And then we share information with other companies in our space when we hear about it, whether people are trying to hack into our system or we hear from others. That's one of the things competitors in this marketplace can really be aligned on, is that it's no good for anyone to have one of these attacks. It just affects everyone.
Everybody.
So, everybody. So that's where our focus is. We don't publish too much about it because we don't want to blueprint out there on how to pack in a Flexport.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where customers get frustrated because they ask a lot of questions, and publicly we give a little bit kind of grayer answers. Privately, we work with our counterpart, our customer CIOs, our CTOs or CSOs, CISOs, whatever title they have, to make sure that we're meeting their security requirements, number one, and then two, they understand some of their actions can affect our security as well. And how do we collaboratively work together to make sure those things don't happen?
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it looks like we need to do a full hour of this. So I'm going to have to talk to your team so we can get back onto the live screen and we can do a full hour of this. But it is time. I just want to let you guys know about some upcoming events. We've got obviously Overhaul happening at 1 p.m. today, LogTech Live happening on Friday, special delivery last Thursday of every month, no bullshipping live every fourth Friday. And of course, I'm going to see you all over at TPM Tech next week and then TPM after that. Will, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on Thoughts and Coffee today.
Thanks for having me, sir. I appreciate it.
Great. Have a great day, everyone.